Erev Tov, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live with a prophetic segment of our news, something that is very important, very serious. It is breaking news. This is the first time that, as far as we are aware, that the identity of what is known to be the Antichrist, or for the Jewish people, the prince that shall come, in Daniel's prophecy, that we can literally discover and know who he really is. It also, in this news segment, we will be bringing out more of the events that are happening in and around the Middle East and where we are, what's about to happen with Hezbollah on the north. And now Hamas has declared that they will join with Hezbollah to fight Israel. We also know the Iranians are helping in this soon attack on Israel, as well on the Syrian border of Israel, another hot spot that is going to cause a tremendous attack that Israel will not be able to withstand. It will actually take the coalition of the United Nations forces to come in to stop it. And that coalition will actually be spearheaded by the power and influence of one man. That man, as many people call him, the Antichrist. That one man is on the scene in the world today, but most people just do not really realize who he is. Today, in this particular prophetic segment, we're going to take on the task in a very simple uncovering mystery that we uncovered here just last night, and we can identify who he really is. Let me take it straight to the Word of God. I will be using, for the sake of the English-speaking people, because we do the news in English, I will be using a King James Bible. It is almost worded correctly as well with the Hebraic text here, but let me just share this with you. I want to take you to Daniel chapter 11, and as the Jewish people know, we have the prince that shall come, who is written here in Daniel 9. It speaks of him when it says here in verse 26, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood, until the end of war desolations are determined. Now the point is, the prince that shall come is of the people who destroy the temple and the sanctuary. Now, many people that know me already know that I have clearly stated that the ones that destroyed the temple and the sanctuary were none other than the Romans. We prove this by Obadiah's prophecy in his book, where God himself accuses the Edomites of standing by. Yes, it is true that they used the Syrian armies in this battle, but God accuses Edom, Esau, of that very act. And of course, the temple treasures were taken back to the Vatican. This new segment I'm going to unravel for you too about the temple treasures. But let's jump right over into Daniel chapter 11. And I'm going to take you down beginning in verse 19. This is the mystery that completely unlocks who this prince that shall come is. If you do not think that the prince is the Antichrist, that's fine. I personally believe that he is one and the same, and nothing less. You will certainly know that the prince that shall come, you will know his identity right now. And we read here, then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. This key prophetic verse is the very key to identify who the Antichrist is, because in the next verse it says, and in his estate shall stand a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably, and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. And when the arms of the flood shall they be overflown from before him, and he shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant, which is the prince that shall come. So we know that this man here, the one that comes in by flatteries, they don't give him the honor of the kingdom. They don't give him the honor of being the head of Israel. But he comes in by flatteries. Now that seems very obvious that Pope Francis fits that description. But before we can absolutely say that Pope Francis could be this man, we have to look at the one that came before him, the raiser of taxes. Let's back up and read it again. Thou shalt then shall stand up in his estate. Now this pontiff here was replacing one before him, a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. Now keep in mind, I'm not a prophet, and what I'm about to share with you, I will say is a conjecture. Although I do believe with all my heart, this may be exactly right. But I think it's very important that we bring this out so that you will know who you are looking at. He's a raiser of taxes, and he shall be destroyed. A few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. Now what's really interesting, and I forget exactly how long he was a pontiff, that would be interesting in itself, is that he was a raiser of taxes. And anybody that can remember about Pope Benedict knows that very well. It says here in an article here, this article was in The Observer, is on Sunday, December the 7th in 2008. Pope attacks tax havens for robbing poor. Hard-hitting Vatican report lays blame for the global financial crisis at the door of offshore centers. It is a message sent from on high to the world's financial and political elite. The Roman Catholic Church is calling for the effective closure of secretive tax havens as a necessary first step to restore the global economy to health. Pope Benedict, in another article, Pope Benedict to condemn tax evasion. That was on Tax-Proof blog. From the Times of London, Pope set to declare income tax evasion socially unjust, by Richard Owen. Pope Benedict XVI is working on doctrinal pronouncement that will condemn tax evasion as socially unjust, according to the Vatican sources. In his second encyclical, the most authoritative statement a pope can issue, the pontiff will denounce the use of tax havens and offshore bank accounts by wealthy individuals, since this reduces tax revenues for the benefit of society as a whole. Forbes magazine, Forbes on their website, www.forbes.com, brought this article out in 2014. 100 Swiss banks get ultimatum, hand over Americans or face U.S. prosecution. Since 2009, the U.S. has had unprecedented success with ferret out offshore accounts. It started in 2008 with key court victories against UBS. In 2009, UBS paid $780 million to the IRS and unpinned Swiss banking forever by handing over Americans. Many other banks followed suit and costs keep rising. Recently, Credit Suisse pleaded guilty and paid $2.6 billion fine. And this went worldwide. I just picked some of the headline articles for you to see. Israel News on the Jerusalem Post reported the Bank Lumini to pay $400 million in tax evasion settlement. RT News, Swiss bank admits to helping wealthy Americans avoid taxes, fined $2.6 billion. The Swiss Credit Suisse pleaded guilty on Monday to charges that it facilitated wealthy Americans who sought to commit tax evasion. So who was that raiser of taxes? It was Pope Benedict. And following his announcement, his encyclical, then the hammer came down all across the world. So anyone that thinks that he is not that particular man that is written there, it'd be awfully strange if he's not, isn't it? Now, we do realize there are historically, when we look at Daniel 11, all the way back here in the times of Antiochus IV, that took and desecrated the temple and set up the image. It was an abomination of desolation. We know that Antiochus of Epiphanes, who is claiming to be God on earth, by the way, this also applies in there historically. But clearly, if Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth, put this in a future context when he mentioned the abomination of desolation in Daniel's writings, even calling Daniel by name, then we know it has a prophetic future as well, not just back during the time of the Maccabees. But interestingly enough, the Maccabees had to war for 3 years to unthrone that Roman seat that had came down into Israel, actually a Greek seat at that time. The Romans later conquered this area. Now, let's move to another part of this. We can identify who the tax raiser was. And again, as I said, it's a conjecture. I can't say 100%, but it's awfully obvious now who that Antichrist is. So we know that the Antichrist, the next one that comes in, he is that prince of the covenant. He comes in with flatteries. In verse 22, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. Verse 23, chapter 11, by the way, of Daniel, if you're following. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. In Hebrew, the word is actually goi, a small nation. Therefore, even at that time, God is considering the Palestinians a nation, even as he does in Ezekiel, because this prince that shall come, according to Ezekiel's prophecy in chapter 35, intends to take both nations or both states, in which he will definitely do for a short period of time. Let's see what he says. He shall enter in peaceably, even upon the fattest places of the province. It's exactly what he did. He came in with flatteries. He even caused Prime Minister Netanyahu to yield, to come to the Vatican. And they even, with the main help of the main source in this was Shimon Peres, President Shimon Peres, former President Shimon Peres of Israel, who made the way, paved the way to bring the Pope into Israel and to give him a seat at King David's tomb. He comes to the fattest of the provinces. The most choicest place in Israel that the Jews have control of was Mount Zion, and it was given to him. Now, this actually was announced when Pope Benedict was the pontiff at the time. But Pope Benedict never came and took the throne on King David's tomb. It was Pope Francis. This is why we clearly see the one that raises taxes, he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. There was a lot of speculation behind his resignation, even some saying that they were going to expose him for child molestation. All kinds of issues, all kinds of rumors that were being spread about him. No one really knows for sure why he resigned, but he did resign nonetheless. As we move on, he shall peaceably, on the fattest places of the province, he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. What is it that he's going to do that none of his fathers have done? It's interesting he called them fathers because the whole papal dynasty is called father. Father this one, father that one, father that one. But he's going to do something that none of them have ever done. What does the prophecy say? Scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Yea, he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds even for a time. He's going to scatter among them the prey. Now that's very interesting in itself that he makes this thing. Now what is that? That prey, it may very well be when the Vatican came, when Titus the Roman general brought back to Rome the temple treasures. No pope has ever been willing to release those treasures. Neither his father nor his father's father or none of the fathers have ever done that. But it says here, he will scatter among them the prey. Is he actually going to release the temple treasures? Maybe so. And it says here, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds even for a time. It could even be that some of these politicians that have been willing to go along with this plan have actually gotten little bits and pieces of the prey, of the temple treasures, as a testament that he is going to do this. He will release the menorah and other artifacts. He shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. Now this is very concerning right here. He uses his power. This is exactly what Rome does. They have the two keys on their flag stating that they control both religious and political powers. They hang their flag in every country they conquer, including Israel. Their flag hangs in Israel as well. But he's going to stir up the king of the south in this particular context, referring to Israel. Now, could be wrong on this, but I believe this is accurate. With a great army, and the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him. I have a strong feeling that this is the war. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Syrians, the rogue troops on the Syrian border there, the Iranians that are assisting in this battle, even with troops, ISIS, all of these groups coming together to try to wipe out Israel. You will also find that Psalm 83 plays into this. Most people call Psalm 83 a war. Psalm 83 is Israel crying out to God to not be silent because the enemies around them have lifted up their head. They've raised a tumult. They're bringing in an uproar, and they're wanting to destroy Israel, and they cry out to God. But nowhere in Psalm 83 do we see that God actually intervenes. They do ask God to do with this enemy as he did, and they name the different battles of time past. But we do not see where God says he will intervene. Not in this battle. Gog and Magog, yes. Armageddon, yes. But not in the first battle. It says here, yea, they that feed of the portion of his meat shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. Who is this here? Is this one that will be destroyed? Is this actually the Prime Minister of Israel? Could it be referring to him himself, or the fact that it destroys his political career because Israel's army is defeated in this battle where the Arab nations are gathered against them? Now see, this is what the Pope's plan is to begin with. He wants Israel's army to lose this battle in order to bring in a United Nations force. Israel will not be totally done away with, but what we know as Israel today will not be the Israel you will see in the very near future. This is when the Pope will get his victory. This is when they'll bring in a United Nations force. The United Nations, the United States, they'll look like great heroes for coming to help America because they already have a coalition force there bombing ISIS in Syria. So they will come to Israel's aid when Israel is being overrun by this huge onslaught that Hezbollah is planning in the very near future. Let's see what else happens. Then shall he return into his own land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land. It seems very obvious, though, right before Hezbollah attacks, and Hamas and all these other forces, Iran and Syrians, that are all surrounding Israel right now that are planning on doing this onslaught, that there's already been a covenant signed. He goes back, though, a very wealthy man. Why would he go back a wealthy man? Well, what it appears to be, is it's going to say here in a moment, he's going to divide up the land. This division is a different division. The coalition forces that help free Israel from all the Muslims that are around them that have been overtaking them, they will come in to fight because as it was in Iraq, as it was in Kuwait, they want to have the oil. They want the natural gas. And so they'll make this covenant. They will accept the dividing of the land. The Pope goes back to his own land because why? He was the one that has the authority, the power to bring them in. And they pay him handsomely in order to pull this off so that the land can be divided up among the nations. Jerusalem will be under a United Nations front, and the Israelis will be pushed all the way back to the coastline. It's sad. In fact, in one place we see that Ashkelon may be the only safe haven for the remnant of Israel. Only time will tell if this is actually correct. As I say, I'm not a prophet. I'm not prophesying these things. I am looking at the prophecies in Daniel. As far as the part about Pope Benedict and the raiser of taxes, I believe this is absolutely accurate. Pope Francis being that Antichrist spirit or that next prince that shall come, I believe this is him. He's being manifested right before our eyes. Now, he returns to his own place. And it says in verse 29, at the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter. For the ships of Cheddim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. And he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. So people within Israel that have forsaken the covenant are the ones that give him his inside intelligence. Who could that be? Not sure about that. But it goes on to say, in verse 31, an arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall be corrupted by flatteries by the people that do know their God, and shall be strong and do exploits. Now, that's very important right there. You see, the wicked, and such as do wickedly against the covenant shall be corrupted by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. These are the Jewish people. Could this be part of the remnant of Israel that is starting to recognize that indeed who their Messiah is? It's a very good possibility. That could be the part of Zechariah 12, where they're recognizing that they had pierced their Messiah. 3 of the tribes. Not all 12 have come home just as of yet, but 3 of them are there. And if that be the case, 36,000 Jewish people stand up as believers. Then it goes on to say, and they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity, by spoil many days. Now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. See, not all Israel is going to believe that call themselves Israel. It is the remnant that will believe, the ones that will not back down. In verse 35, and some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them, to purge, and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. And the king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above God. This is exactly what the Pope has done. And by the way, for the desire of women, that word desire is a good translation because he doesn't have a passion for women. And that's what the popes do. They do not take a wife, they take a vow of celibacy. And he does exalt himself as if he were God. Notice what it says next though, but in his estate shall he honor the God of forces. God, when he says God of forces, some people say his God is a military God. No, it's not. That is speaking of God himself, the God of Israel, because he is called in the Hebrew language Adonai Tsavaot, or God's divine name, Yahweh Tsavaot, the God of armies. See, he acknowledges the God of armies in his estate. His position requires him to acknowledge that God is the supreme leader. But watch what it says in. And a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold, silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Go to the Vatican and see all the idols, all the stones, all the precious things of gold and silver. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. What gain is that? Again, this part is a conjecture. I'm not sure about this. I believe this particular division for gain, for his monetary gain, so he can get more taxes, like Pope Benedict made sure that the Vatican got more taxes. What does he do? Well, it seems obvious. Like I said, the coalition forces that help push back the Arabic enemies. This is why this big thing right now is against the Arabic peoples. You know, there are some good Arabic people that do not want all this violence. And they don't even know why all this violence started. I know some. I've heard their testimonies. Just because a person is Arabic does not make them a bad person. There are Arabic Christians that are slaughtered at the hand of the Muslims. And they've all been incited by one man that has the power and influence to do it. The Pope of Rome. While he sits back in his castle as a king, pretending like he knows nothing about it. I'm Stephen Ben Danoon with Israeli News Live. Your prophetic moment. I think now you may know who the Prince that shall come really is. Good evening.